pandemic got us into a reflective space and made us look inward to see what we can do for the world at large. As a self-expression coach, I became a catalyst for women and started Vani, a one-on-one coaching program for women on finding their voice, to speak up, to be visible. As a storyteller, I spotted there were many ordinary people amongst us leading extraordinary lives, making a difference to the world, and they needed to be heard. Thus was born You and I with Rashmi Shetty, where amazing personal journeys with their uniqueness and individuality are showcased, a reaffirmation of the fact: open your eyes wider. The world is far more beautiful when we acknowledge the presence of both you and I. Our guest today is Pallavi Kumar, Executive Director, Mohan Foundation, Delhi NCR. Working for NGOs for the last 30 years, Pallavi has fought for HIV orphans, comforted the specially abled, and enthused the underprivileged. She currently heads the Delhi NCR office of Mohan Foundation, an NGO committed to promoting deceased organ donation in the country. Pallavi had the opportunity to work with the Tanker Foundation in Chennai, an organization providing subsidized dialysis to patients living with end-stage kidney failure. Her work there helped her understand the plight of patients living with end-stage organ failure, requiring transplant for survival on one hand, and the acute shortage of organs in our country on the other. Armed with this understanding and her deep passion for the cause, Pallavi set up the Delhi NCR office for the foundation 10 years ago to create awareness on organ donation and to work closely with hospitals to set systems in place to promote organ donation. Beneath the soft heart, there is a glint of steel that emerged when she braved her way up to conquer the Everest Base Camp in 2018 and Mount Kilimanjaro in 2019 with the singular aim of promoting organ donation. Listen in as Pallavi shares her journey and talks on her meaningful work with friend raising, organ donation, life, and death. Hi Pallavi, such a pleasure to have you on You and I with Rashmi Shetty. I love the work that you do and the amazing space that you're in. So meaningful and so beautiful as far as life is concerned, and living beyond what we breathe to make a difference that we leave behind. And that space itself is something which got me intrigued to get in touch with you and have you on the podcast. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Rashmi. Thank you so much. Yeah.
And I want to know what little Pallavi was like to the Pallavi Kumar that the world knows today.
It's now close to 35 years that I passed out of school. And at a recent union, interestingly, got talking about our times in school as most reunions tend to do. And the conversation especially moved around reminiscing what we wanted to be, when we grew up back in school. What is it that we thought we would be when we grew up? And there was obviously a lot of laughter, and because a lot of us turned out to be in entirely different fields than what we had anticipated for ourselves. But what everyone said about me, almost everyone that was there, what they had to say was that you always said that you wanted to make a difference. So they may not have been great clarity as to what I wanted to do, but I wanted to kind of be able to contribute to the society. So that narrative came across pretty early on in life, and almost everybody, all my friends who were sitting there, mentioned that used to say, kuch karna hai where I can make a difference to the society. And now it's been over 3 decades of working with a variety of, I've been in the development sector right from the very beginning. It's going to be 30 years working with a variety of worthwhile causes. And I'm really, truly thankful for, the fact that life has given me these opportunities. In that sense, I think I was truly lucky to have found a purpose so early in life and could pursue it because I had such clarity pretty early on. Some like me find their calling more easily. Some take time, which is fine too. But in hindsight, what I've learned is that if you're good at something, that if you're passionate about something, it's good to invest in it, because then you will do well in it, because then it's something, it's your calling, it's your passion, and you know you enjoy it. It'll never be a chore to you. I love my work. It's never work for me. It is a way of living. It is what I do. It gives me meaning. It gives me purpose. And and no matter how difficult it is always enjoyable, because it is something I want to do. So that was a little Pallavi that has become this older Pallavi, and that thread remains common through these years. Yeah.
To get you to this podcast, Pallavi, I know how many months we've been talking and
Oh,
coordinating.
sorry.
But you know, I what piques my curiosity is you said that is what little Pallavi was, and this is who the Pallavi Kumar you see now is. But where did you study, and what were your influences as a child to get it so clear that you want to make a difference?
So my father was in the army, and we moved quite a bit with him. But the later part of schooling, we stayed put in the army public school here in Dholakua till my class 12. And school was fun, but academically it was frustrating. None of the subjects that were offered to me were subjects that I wanted to do. I had never had great aptitude for maths and accounts, and science was not something I was cut out for. When it came to arts, we were offered subjects like history and geography. And back then we never had sociology and psychology, and it was very frustrating for me, because I didn't enjoy those subjects. I took commerce. I find it so ridiculous that I did back then, but because someone else was taking it, I took it. Those were not things that were intellectually stimulating me, or even otherwise stimulating me. And when I cleared my class 12, and that was a time when I was wondering, because like I said, this clarity that I wanted to do something which made a difference. Even in school, I had begun to volunteer with blind schools, or homes for the disabled, or for the orphan, and I would go and spend considerable time during my summer vacations. I think a lot of it came from my mom. I saw her doing a lot for the have-nots, so to speak, and a lot for animals. I mean, our house was always known as the house that had about 10, 12 dogs, stray dogs being fed. So I think that inspired me. And, when I speak to young people, Rashmi, I always give a lot of emphasis on role models. I always encourage them to think back on people that inspired them. So if I look at myself, I remember being very fascinated with Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, Rosa Parks, Anne Frank, so I think that gives one a great insight into the shaping of one's own personality, because obviously somewhere deep down you want to be like these people. People who are fearless, who are giving back to the society, who are breaking the norm. So I think we should never underestimate our role models, because they really, truly, intrinsically help you give an insight about what ticks for you, what is it that excites you, why are these certain people fascinating you more than perhaps someone else. So it's and then it's important to learn from their characteristics, learn how they overcame obstacles. I mean, Oprah Winfrey was fired as a news reporter, that never stopped her from being. Recently, I was reading this book about the girl called Maria Turpakai Wazir. For the first 16, 17 years of her life growing up in Pakistan, she dressed up as a boy because she wanted to play. You know, I get inspired very easily, and I am so thankful, and I feel so blessed that I have this ability to be inspired by people, because I think if you cannot get inspired, it's there's something missing. So I get inspired by people. I'm inspired by anyone and everyone who's pushing their boundaries. It could be the woman working in my house who learned cycling just because she thought it would save time. That inspires me. So I think role models really decide who you are. And I remember reading a lot on Mother Teresa, watching documentaries on her. At that time, I went to visit my dad in Baroda. He was posted there at that time, and MS University was offering a course in child psychology. And I'd done a lot of work in the previous years, volunteering at institutions, child-related institutions, and I did my graduation in child psychology. And that kind of set my path for me, and I decided this is a space, by and large, that I want to be in. It's now called human development. Back then, it was called child development, and moved on to do my master's in social work, which kind of opened my vista, allowed me to get a larger perspective of what I wanted to. In between my graduation and my post graduation, I did a course in special education at this what was then called Spastic Society, and I worked for a year at the Spastic Society. And since then, this is the larger field. Of course, I have worked with different causes.
How did you choose each of those, Pallavi? Today you're with the Mohan Foundation, but otherwise, how did that journey in that space begin? Because you did child psychology and then you moved into a Master of Social Work. So, how did all of them combine? Where did they amalgamate? How did your journey just bloom post
So
that?
you'll be my very first job was the UN job, Rashmi, I know it was a cause of big envy for my classmates. I joined what was then what's called the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, working with Afghan refugees, largely Afghan refugees at that time. And 6 months into the job, I quit because it was so frustrating, because UN works very differently. And I just passed out. I was passionate. I was full of, I was raring to change the world. I wanted to get my hands dirty. I wanted to be out there where the action was. And UN doesn't allow you to do that. And I am so happy that I quit when I did, because if I hadn't quit back then, it would have been very difficult to quit later, because it offers you a good salary. It is a comfortable, place to be in. And I remember my father being very angry with me. In fact, my father never approved back then of my having taken this as a career option. He used to think social work is something that housewives do in their spare time. For it to be a career option was beyond him. So I remember having a lot of disagreements with him on that. He was very happy when I got the UN job. When I quit 6 months later, he was again very unhappy. At that time, I took up, I joined Springdale's as a school counselor, and I worked a lot with children on counseling issues and all. And about 2 years later, UN was handing over its work to NGOs, because they realized that there was a need for deeper intervention. And my boss at UN was taking up heading these operations at Pallavi. Now we are doing what you always said you wanted to do. Because at the UN, all I had to do was make home visits and come back and make my reports on whether this family should be allowed sustenance allowance, is what they called at that time. And I felt more like a social inspector than a social worker. How many carpets in the house, how many refrigerators. And I saw the need for so much more work. Most of the men were undergoing depression. Women were struggling, children were not in schools, there was no source of income. They all came from this beautiful country, and now they were living in barsatis, in hot, uncomfortable. So I used to always say, we need to do more. And I was always told, but this is the mandate of UNHCR. So he called me back. He's saying, now we are doing what you always said that you wanted, that there was a need to do. So I joined back one of the organizations that was looking at psychosocial aspects and vocational training and other rehabilitation. And I did some good work there till 3-4 years later, I conceived and I had my first child. And I had my only child. I have one child first. When Anushka was about 6 months old, my husband got posted to Chennai. And I had obviously taken a little break to be with my daughter, and I moved to Chennai with him. And while I was there, I met this very interesting lady who was working for a foundation called TANPO Foundation. It's an acronym for Tamil Nadu Kidney Research Foundation, an organization that's providing subsidized dialysis to poor people. And I took on a part-time role with them on fundraising, organizing events, just helping them in their branding so that they could attract more funds. And that's where I realized the need of transplants. That's where I realized what an acute shortage of organs there is in our country. And this is only kidney that we're talking about, and how people are hooked onto machines for years and years, day in and day out, and are unable to live a normal life just because they don't have access to. And that's where I met Dr. Sunil Shroff, who is the founder of Mohan Foundation, where I am currently at an event that I had organized. And he said, Pallavi, we need someone to set up an office in Delhi, and I'm going to catch hold of you and I'm going to ask you to set up. Till then, Mohan Foundation was largely a southern based organization.
Yeah.
And then, of course, after 2, 3 years, I came back to Delhi, and yeah, my experience at Tanker Foundation helped me realize that perhaps I had skills in fundraising.
After this post graduation, how did you know branding, fundraising, and all of those?
I don't know.
Was it inbuilt
But
that?
I think it was. I think what is inbuilt is I bring passion to what I do, and I'm able to convey that passion to the person in front of me. I think that is what is inbuilt. And during my time there, I realized that I could help people feel strongly enough about causes for them to invest their time, energy, and money. And that is something the not-for-profit sector needs very badly. And I came here, I joined what is called the Charities Aid Foundation. It's an international organization, and I headed their individual giving. It's called donor advised fund, where you engage individuals to invest large amounts of money for causes. So and manage those projects. So I did that before I was took on by this organization called the South Asian Fundraising Group as their CEO, which actually trains organizations in how to raise funds. So an NGO typically has 4, 5 sources of funds: individuals, trusts and foundations, governments, events, your own earned income through. So how then organizations can build capacities in these. So I did that. But for the longest time after coming back from Delhi, I was with NAS Foundation, which is an HIV/AIDS organization. I worked there for about 7, 8 years ago before I moved on to realizing that fundraising is quite a core competency, and I could help a much larger number of NGOs help raise funds.
Fundraising is quite a challenge as well, because educating a person who has the funds to give but who's not aware where it'll be better utilized
Yeah.
is where your competency comes into play. So when you were on this journey of fundraising, are there any moments where it was an aha for you as much as for the donor as well?
NAS has a care home for HIV positive orphan children. It's very specifically for children who were born of positive parents and are positive themselves. And most orphanages and care homes will not take some such children because they probably do not have the skills. So we started off with 1 or 2 children because we just couldn't find anywhere to place them, and then it became up. It's fairly expensive to look after the positive child. In any case, it's a resource intensive project because there is, of course, the regular needs of a child, and then there are these additional needs of. So at that time, we were looking at about 40, 45 children that there were. And I think in the 2, 3 years that I started working with individual donors, all my children had an individual donor, uh, you know, uh, in perpetuity. They said they will continue to help this child for as long. And it is a lot of work, Rashmi, because you're working with each of that donor to continue to feel invested in that child. There's a lot of reporting and documentation. There is a lot of uh, effort in helping them create that connection. It was an aha moment that all of them, we didn't require any institutionalized funding. It was just individuals who had that child that they were looking at and were willing to continue to do it year after year after year. And till the time at least I left, I had all of those children. Of course, other kind of funding, grants and all from that is routine. That is not.
Yeah. So in a society where people hesitate to donate and are not too sure whether the people they are giving to are using it for their personal purpose or for the real cause that they claim they are part of, how do you build the bridge, Pallavi, in order
Rashmi,
to
I
make sure?
strongly believe, maybe a bit of a controversial statement, but I strongly believe that people are giving to you because they feel that you will use this money in the best possible manner. I'm talking about individuals. I'm not talking about larger grants and government funding or trusts and foundations. I'm talking about individuals. Individuals, when they give, they are giving to you because they believe that you represent a cause and you will make sure that this money is spent. But I have had donors who have moved from cause to cause to cause. From years, I've had people who gave to HIV/AIDS when I was part of HIV/AIDS, who gave when I joined Charities Aid Foundation, and where I was looking at a variety of projects, and it could be women empowerment, it could be education, it could be skill development, and I have people who continue to give now till now because I moved into organ donation. So it's really it's more than fundraising; it's friend raising. I believe, because. Yeah.
I love that term. I'm
And a lot
sure.
of people, Rashmi, do tell me, thank you for letting us know how we can do some good with our work. So in Mohan Foundation, transplants, that are very expensive, Rashmi. Most of the transplants are in the private sector. There are not enough government hospitals doing transplants. So we set up something called Anudan. It is a fund that is set aside only for poorer people, so that they can be helped with life-saving transplants. And a lot of people that I know over the years have been contributing their funds so that younger children can, get transplants in the current scenario with what the reality of the country is.
Pallavi, if I can bring you back to organ donation. Okay, this is a very beautiful cause per se, but many people think that the Indian customs and traditions do not allow organ donation. And how do you convince a family more than anything once the person is on ventilator or is brain dead and therefore cannot take the decision? If the family has to take the decision, it's a very delicate moment as well to talk to the family about organ donation. So, when you're getting into a space like that, first and foremost, let's just go back to a question, very basic question. What are the organs that can be donated and which will work? We all know about the cornea, the eye donation, but there are other parts in the body also which can be donated when the person is brain dead. So if you can just educate us there and then take us into the
So
next.
a single yes from a family uh, could save multiple lives, both in terms of organs, life-saving organs, and tissues. So, if you look at organs, it's both the kidneys, liver, heart, pancreas, lungs, small intestines, a whole lot of things. Now, there are a whole lot of other things which are called tissues. So, corneas are actually tissues, they're not organs. Skin, bone, heart walls, tissues, ligaments. There are multiple things that a deceased donor can give, but most commonly in terms of organs, in terms of life-saving organs, it's the kidneys, the liver, the heart, the lungs, the pancreas. So that's it's amazing. It's amazing that you don't need them anymore. They're of no use to you, and you can, with something that is of no use to you, you can save so many lives and transform so many families. It's it's such a beautiful concept. Um, when Dr. Shroff asked me to set up the Delhi office, I'd never set up an office before. I'd never actually gone through the process of identifying a physical space, talking to the property dealer, setting up. So from that place to hiring my first employee, and I had my doubts. I'd always been part of already established organizations. Then I set up the foundation, and I had gone back to Chennai for my first training. Serendipity, what can I call it? It was a 5-day training, and the third day of training, I was called out, and I was wondering, why am I being called out? So, Rashmi, what are the chances that in the 5 days that I was in Chennai, in the government hospital that we worked there, they had a Bihari laborer who had a 16-year-old boy who had fallen from the construction site that he was working with and declared brain dead. The father had come all the way from Purnia, Bihar, a very backward area. I know of it because my father was posted there near Katiyar. And the transplant coordinators in Chennai, either they could speak English or Tamil, they didn't know how to talk to this father. What were the chances that in those 5 days that I was there with my doubts, with my underconfidence about having taken on this big role, setting up the program, and that I should have had this opportunity to speak to this father. And I went to the hospital, madhouse, Rajiv Gandhi General, one of the biggest hospitals in Chennai. It's a madhouse. For people from the north, Tamil can sound like a very alien language. And it was a cacophony because the reception was full of some thousands of people. They were shouting, they were screaming, and all in an alien. It was so disturbing to me. And to think of this father who had come from this far off place to this alien city, people speaking an alien language. His only son out of the other four children, he had three other daughters. He has just been given the news that he has died. And here is this bunch of people asking him for his organs. I mean, how bizarre that can seem, you know. And I was said that we cannot talk to him, you talk. And I never had this conversation. Of course, I've been part of counseling and other, but asking for an organ was completely new for me. And I started talking to him. And even as I was talking to him, I found the whole conversation so bizarre. Pallavi, what is it that you're asking this man to do? And he was a poor man. He was in tattered lungi and he was so poor and illiterate. And by this time, I had started crying, Rashmi. I couldn't control. I tried to control, and beyond a point, I said, to hell with it. I'm just going to have this conversation. And I, of course, explained to him what we were asking of him. And he saying, nahi, ma'am sab. He said, use the word, ma'am sab. ये नहीं कर पाऊंगा. I said, मैं समझ सकती हूँ. मैं बस आपसे इतना पूछना चाहती हूँ. आपको इतना समझ में आ रहा है, आप कुछ गलत नहीं हो रहा है. He saying, ma'am sab, मुझे इतना समझ में आ रहा है, आप कुछ गलत नहीं कर सकते. He just made that statement. I can understand this much that as a person, perhaps you cannot be doing anything wrong, but I cannot go ahead and say yes. I said, that's quite all right. I'm just one request to make of you. I'm going to ask you to move away from this noise. Go back and reflect on what I have said. Whatever you come back and give me is your final decision. I will accept it. And I requested my colleagues to take him away. It's in one of those side tea shops and give him tea. And I had said what I had to say to him. Half an hour later, he came back, Rashmi, and he said, tell me where I have to sign. I'm happy to give all his organs. And at that point, Rashmi, I said, if this man in this situation can say yes, then I, as an individual with the right training and the right amount of sincerity and truthfulness brought into the situation, can help any family say yes. Yes, I will have many no's. But the fact that I have been invested with skills that can help families to take decisions that can impact, so just seemed like just the right thing to put my energy going forward, you know. And I find that so strange that that case had to come in those 5 days that I was there. So some larger powers were kind of helping me in this process. I had no doubts post that. I mean, of course, I've had a number of no's from families and a number of beautiful families who had the courage to say yes. That's all part of the game. But the fact that I inherently believe in this process, that every family has the right to be given this choice, and the fact that the choice will impact and save lives, and the fact that I can be instrument in making this marriage happen, it's a good place to be in.
Yeah, seriously. Beautiful space to be in, meaningful space to be in. But you know, there is a myth amongst many Indians that, especially Indians, this is where I see it, that if you donate an organ, the next birth, because we believe in rebirth, the next birth you will not have that particular organ or you'll suffer from some illness of that organ which you donate and give away. So, in such thought processes which the person has, obviously it's come somewhere from the culture of the family and the values that they have been brought up with. So when you face objections like that, how do you break those myths for those families?
Okay, let me tell you very, very honestly, Rashmi. When I started this work, I was told there are a lot of religious reasons why families don't give. This came as one of the reasons. I have now been counseling families in my 14th year, speaking to families. And in all my experiences, not one family has said this. I think our people are far more intelligent. Um, Perhaps if I had to go counsel in rural areas, I would come across, but all our counseling work is focused in metros and in first tier cities and all. Our families are asking far more intelligent questions. Many families refuse because they've never had this conversation. They've never had the opportunity to discuss organ donation in their heads or with their families. So the first response in grief is saying, "Nahi, we would like to not think about this," because they've never thought about it in normal, healthier, not so stressful situations. So that's a whole chunk of people. The others who have perhaps given it a thought or read about it or have had they're asking more intelligent questions. They want to know who will get the organs. Is there a fair distribution system? Will it just be used for the, by the private hospital for their own advantage? Is there a fair registry in place? They want to know how the body will look once the organs have been retrieved, because of course there will be enterics, there'll be other people. They want to know how much time it will take, the whole process. They want to know cost issues, if we say yes. So our people are asking far more intelligent questions. Very rarely, there was this husband that I was speaking to, and I was counseling him. His wife had died. And then he heard me. And you know what he said, Rashmi, at the end of it? He said, मैं हाथ जोड़ के माफी चाहता हूँ कि मैं हाँ नहीं बोल पा रहा. He's saying, I know this is the right thing to do. I know it in my heart that this is what I should be doing. I should be saying yes to you, ma'am. I don't have the courage. I don't have the courage to go back and face my family and the panchayat and the questions they will ask me. Oh, your wife died. What did you do with the organs? So he's saying, logically, if you ask me, I know I should be saying yes to me, ma'am, but I do not have the courage. We'll give her conias, but so those are the kind of families I am interacting with. And if you ask me, Rashmi, today the problem is not so much with the public. It is the problem in the system, in the hospitals, in the government will, in the infrastructure readiness to make donation happen. Our public, if it's hearing me, I know, I believe that they are evolved, they are thinking individuals, they take decisions based on their own logic, not because of some text in their religious book, which is not even written, because these books were being written when there was no organ donation and transplantation. So they have nothing really to say on the matter. I think people are thinking, and they are thinking for themselves. They're more interested in how things are happening in hospitals, what kind of, how they're treated in hospitals, what kind of faith they have in the private sector, all of that helps people decide whether they want to be organ donors or not.
Yeah, yeah. And now that you brought it up, there is a zonal coordinating committee which actually decides the donor list and who
Yes,
goes in
yes,
first.
yes.
So, in many cases, it is surprising to see how some people end up getting the organs way faster than people who've been waiting longer. Is age, what are the different factors? Is age one of those
In
factors?
certain cases, and liver and all, they have something called super urgent categories, because unlike kidney, where you can continue living on dialysis, many of the other organs, you will die if you do not get in time. So in liver, there are certain situations where the person is so ill that if in the next 3-4 days the person does not get a liver transplant, he or she will die. So those are called super urgent categories, and the government will allocate an organ to that person over and above for someone who's been on if they can kind of continue to live on for a longer time. So but I want to tell the listeners that each state has its waiting list. It's a fairly evolved system, fairly transparent and equitable system. There are, of course, some lacunas, but the intent is to make it as fair and transparent and equitable. And it cannot happen that the hospital can decide who the organ will go, because every hospital has a list, and they hand that list to the state registry. And when the organs are allocated and the hospital is not giving it to the person first from the list, they have to give valid reasons for that. Either the person couldn't reach this other city on time to have the transplant, or was not well enough, or was not the matching tissue and blood donor recipient, or perhaps couldn't collect the money for the transplant. The reasons have to be given, and they have to justify the reasons before the next person. I think we have to believe in the system, and we have to believe in the goodness of this whole act, is what I believe.
Well said. Yes, because there is the element of trust right from the family, which accepts that, yes, go ahead and take the organs. Now, another thing that many people I know do and have signed up is for body donation. But there's a question that is lurking, which is when a person donates the entire body, are the organs taken off which can be used on other people and the body goes into the other departments?
Rashmi, a very
Yeah.
good question. So, if you have to be a whole body donor, you can't be an organ donor because the bodies have to be go as whole, because the students are being taught anatomy. So the anatomy includes all the organs. If you remove them, then it's not a complete anatomy. So they can donate corneas, but the body cannot be donated for medical education and research if organs have been donated.
Okay, now this is something that was a question that was lurking at the back of the mind. So, do you think it is wiser to do body donation or be an organ donor? You know, now we get those cards that we sign and keep in our wallets and along with us.
Rashmi, this is something I tell people, that not everybody has the privilege of being an organ donor, because not everybody who dies can be an organ donor. This is something again something I would like to clarify. You can be a solid organ donor. These organs that we spoke about, life-saving organs, kidneys, liver, heart, pancreas, lungs, and all, only and only in the case of brain death. Not everybody has a brain death. Death, as you and I understand, is heart stops beating, cardiac death, all of that. Most people die like that. In that case, they cannot be organ donors. They can be tissue donors, and so everybody who dies can donate their eyes and eventually can donate the body for research. Brain death happens in cases where there's been a serious injury to the brain, most often accident cases, and unfortunately a lot of young lives get lost, and a lot of our donors are young people because these are accident cases, two-wheelers, head injury, or stroke, anything that causes bleeding inside the brain. The person is rushed to the hospital. Because the breathing is compromised, the person is put on a ventilator, and then doctors try to do whatever they can to stop the bleeding and the swelling inside the brain. Brain is encased in skull, which is hard, so beyond a point the brain cannot swell, which increases the pressure inside the brain, and which is more than the beating heart. So the blood supply to the brain is cut off, and the brain dies. The entire brain dies. But since the person had been put on the ventilator before the brain died, it's still pumping the heart and the organs are still getting oxygen and blood. It's a very unique situation. The person has died, but the organs are still alive for some time. Now, if you look at a person who's brain dead, like I did when I saw that young child in Chennai, even though I had been trained about brain death, it's very difficult, because if you see the person's chest is moving up and down, it looks like that person is breathing. It looks like that person is just unconscious. Especially for families, it's so difficult to accept it. Plus, there's not a great faith in the private sector. So it is a very, very tricky moment for counselors, because you're telling them he's died, and the person can be seen like he's breathing, but the person is dead. It's not to be confused with coma. The person is medically and in every which way legally dead. And that short duration where the organs are still alive, the heart will also stop beating. It's just a matter of time, is when we approach families. And Rashmi, you will understand it's not an easy job. And very often people ask me, I think you asked me a little earlier, we got waylaid, how do you do it? There's no tailor-made conversation. There's nothing to say, this is what I speak to families, because each family is unique. Their response to grief is unique. Their relationship with this person who's no more is unique. Their knowledge of organ donation is different. Their experience with this hospital is different. It's a whole lot of their notion of death and afterlife, as you said, is different. So all of those factors will determine whether this family will say yes to organ donation or not. So there are some families, the conversation is very matter of fact. I go in very prepared for a longer conversation, but they just said, yeah, maybe we should go ahead, or maybe we should not, don't want to go ahead. With some, it takes so much longer, because you're helping the family accept grief, and grief has its own stages. So to be able to have those multiple conversations till you bring them to a time where they're at least mentally in some position to understand what you're asking of them. So it's really and for me it's a new conversation every time. It's the same courage that I have to. But Rashmi, what has changed over the years is my own way of looking at this. When I started this work, I used to think the conversation was all about saving other lives. A very strategic change in that thinking is that when I speak to families, my first and foremost objective is that I think as a family, as an individual, you have a right to be given this option. It's your prerogative to be given this information and this right to choose. Yes, just the choices you make then have certain, consequences for some other people. That my whole conversation, how it used to move, has changed. And I think that helped. So in all my counseling, and all the times that I've spoken to families, I've got a lot of no's, but I've never had a family shouting and screaming at me. Not once. How dare you kind of a response has never come to me. Never once.
Okay.
In fact, there have been apologetic no's, like I shared that.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of consents. But I've never had someone screaming at me like, I've just lost someone. How dare you ask me? Because that approach, where I think, if somebody did not give you this choice now, later on you should not feel, hey, nobody ever told me, nobody ever asked me, maybe I wanted to do this.
Just one question on this, where you spoke about the ventilator when it is on, it keeps the heart pumping and a few of the organs alive. So, how many hours, like within 6 hours, the cornea has to be removed for the cornea to be used on someone else? So, obviously there's a time limit where green corridors are made and created for organs to be just transported from one city to the other, state to the other. So, what are some of those organs, just keeping the ventilator on, that we can save and use so the family can take a decision at that point and then it is useful for going ahead and saving other people?
Okay, so the person is on a ventilator, but like I said, the person is no more. The person is dead. Let's not even use any ambiguous terminologies. The person is dead. Now, the person could continue, the heart could continue to beat on a ventilator for 1 day, 2 days, sometimes 4, 5 days, but on an average, about 2 days. Now, that also depends on a lot of other things, the person's other conditions, is the BP fluctuating, is the temperature rising, all of that. And that's the whole space of maintenance of a brain dead donor. You have to maintain the person, because now the maintenance is to keep the organs optimal. So of course the family is given time to take decision, and if it's a medical legal case, all accident cases are medical legal case, the police gets involved, and then obviously that delays the process that much more. Forensic gets involved and all of that. So depending upon who this person was, how old he was, what kind of health, what kind of health status that person had. So if it's diabetes or something, perhaps the kidneys will not be taken. Heart is normally not taken from people who are above 55 years or older. Lungs or again need younger people. Pancreas need, with kidneys and liver you can go up to 70, 75, 80 and all of that. Now increasingly older donors. But once the organ is retrieved from the body, then each organ has its own life. They are preserved in a liquid, in a liquid, and heart has to be used within 4 hours of having taken it out of one body before it's put into the other. Same with lungs. With kidney and liver, one gets some more, almost 18 to 20 hours. But the idea is, quicker you put the organ into another body, the quicker, the lesser time it's out of the body, it's called ischemia time, the better it is for the health of the organs. The idea is to do it as quickly as possible, but some organs do afford more time than others.
Okay. And amongst the people that you have counseled and seen in this many years, Pallavi, who has been the youngest donor and who has been the oldest donor? And I'm sure with the youngest donor, it must have kind of shifted something in you as well.
It does. My first young donor was this very bright engineering student, second year engineering student, and he was carpooling with three other boys and going to give his exam. And he had an accident. Two boys died on the spot. One escaped with very minor injuries. And Sushant was brought into Gangaram Hospital and declared brain death. He had already lost his mother. And I spoke to the father. What an amazingly courageous man. And he said, Sushant always liked to come first in everything. And sure enough, he's the first one to leave the world too. And he agreed to donate his organs. And uh, later on, the father said, "But pera beta ab saath zindagiyon mein jee raha hai," because it is a young donor, so both the kidneys, heart, liver, both the corneas, and his small intestine bowel was transplanted to another young boy who had not eaten solid food in 3 years. He was on liquid diet because he needed a. So, of course, there have been far younger donors in our country. We've had donors who are as old as a couple of days. I have not counseled a family that with that younger donor, younger in their in their late teens and early 20s is what the youngest that I have. Hats off to families, hats off to parents who donate the organs of their young children. And a couple of years ago, uh, one of the trustees of Gangaram Hospital, Mr. Tejram, 88-year-old man, he had a brain death, and the family was very keen to donate the organs because he'd always been a very person who wanted to do things for others. And we thought 88, we really one wondered, what all organs could be in a usable condition. But he had lived a fairly healthy life, and both his kidneys and liver were retrieved and nothing else because everything else didn't lend itself to being retrieved because of his age. And of course, when you take out organs from such old donors, you will not give it to a 20-year-old, or it will be then given to slightly older recipients. So again, my message is, as individuals, we need to decide whether we want to do this or not, whether this is important to us all. Whenever death happens, 2 years later, 10 years later, 40 years later, tomorrow, we don't know. We don't have control on that. At that time, the medical experts will decide which organ is in a position to be taken out of it. They will not take out organs and then decide whether they have to be used. It's a fairly systematic process. Tests are done, and only those organs that are going to be used will be retrieved. So that conversation they will have with the family that we want to retrieve these organs. And so like in Manipur, we started work in Northeast 2-3 years ago, a very satisfying part of my work. And we started working with the government hospital there. And we actually helped them start their transplants. They've already done 20 kidney transplants living in the last 7 months. This is Northeast, this is Manipur, Imphal. I mean, and now we are, of course, focusing our energies on deceased organ donation. So day before yesterday, we had a family that said yes. A first counseling and the family said yes. Of course, we could not go through with the donation because infrastructurally we weren't ready. But in that situation, we were only taking out the 2 kidneys and the 2 corneas because there is no liver transplant in the north whole of no heart, no lung. We didn't want to place additional pressure of trying to send it to other. Apna hi kar le, bahut badi baat hai. It was their first donation. That's how it works. Yeah.
A personal question, Pallavi. If you have to define death, what would you define it as?
If I had to define death, so I had written an article, Rashmi, where I put down these thoughts a couple of years ago, where life, we're so concerned with life after death. I am more concerned about life before death. In many ways, we cease to live, much before we've actually stopped living. And that is an area of bigger concern for me, that as to how we find each day a reason to live and to contribute and to be alive in different ways. So death for me is when you stop having a purpose in life. For me, that would be.
Wow. And life is all about seeking purpose or finding your purpose.
Having a purpose and working towards it, and also not just that, but also finding ways to find meaningful enjoyment.
No, I asked you this question because you see death almost every day and you're talking to people who are grieving. And like you said, there are many stages of grief. And now I'm sure you'll understand which stage each family you're talking to or the individual family member you're talking to is on. Your perspective of life and death must have altered also in the
Greatly,
process.
hugely. It's
Yeah.
amazing how death ceased to I mean, it doesn't impact me so much anymore. What still impacts me is suffering. I'm unable to deal with suffering. Death per se, the inevitability of it's something that I've gotten used to it. I know it'll happen. But suffering is something I'm still getting my head around. So my mom's suffering a lot right now. She has multiple health issues and she's in 24/7 pain. I'm actually able to tell myself, let her go, because as long as you're living, each day should be a happy, healthy, normal day where you're able to realize what you want to do for that particular day. If you can't do that, I really don't see the meaning of life anymore. So, but yeah, I have to learn to become a little more detached with suffering. I've not been able to do that. So that's a learning.
That's true. That's true. And suffering is part and parcel of life that
Yes.
we all are leading. It could be in varying degrees, but all of us have our own little sufferings.
Yeah.
And talking about suffering, we had the pandemic, which kind of shook the entire world and taught us the meaning of the moment, the now, that we need to celebrate rather than worrying about a past we can't change or a future we have no control over. So, what have your takeaways from the pandemic?
Yeah, the fact, the interconnectedness of this world came across so strongly in that in the pandemic, that we are all so together in this whole thing. It was a great equalizer, you know, such a great equalizer. It also taught me personally to stop. I have a problem with that, you know, and I have a problem with always trying to pack too much in my day. I feel, oh, this is something that I burden myself with. What did I do today with my day? Which is not a nice healthy thing. Let me be very honest. You know, I sometimes push myself far too much to make each day count. You know, I think pandemic taught me it's all right to slow down. You know, it's all right to not do something each day. It's okay. There will be times you will be able to do more, and some days probably that. I think in terms of work, I think it was a great time for the foundation because we're all just so caught up in doing, things each day. Suddenly we had time, and we have a lot. Suddenly we grew very quickly in the last couple of years. So we started multiple offices, which were kind of working in silos. Pandemic, we all came together. The Zoom facility suddenly broke down all the geographical barriers. We were talking more to each other, we were discussing each other, or we were strategizing more, which we hadn't done in many years, and just because we're all understaffed and overworked like any NGO. We redefined ourselves in many ways. So we have a lot of we are a very strong training organization. We've already had some training online. We suddenly realized that we were already equipped with the pandemic, and we invested ourselves in that area. We came up with so many online courses, smaller master classes, because and now much after the pandemic, they are so much in demand. So we are, I think it was in many ways, it take us time to stop running, think together as a team, strategize ourselves, find out where we are, where we need to go. I think it was, in that sense, it was good. It was forced break.
True, force break. Pallavi, as a woman on this journey that you have been on in all these different sectors and in life per se, is there something which redefines empowerment for you that you want to talk about?
Yeah. So, I admit I'm lucky. It's not the same world that our mothers and our grandmothers lived in. There are far more choices. On a more personal level now, I've been thinking a lot on empowerment, and it is taking on a whole new meaning. And I see it as a journey rather than a destination, you know. So, and I'm also beginning to understand that for it to be true empowerment, it cannot be something that's given to you. You know, it is not something that is handed over to you. You have to internalize it for yourself. So very often you will hear women say, and I have said it, you know, my husband is such a lovely person. He gives me so much freedom. Now, that statement needs to be examined very closely because, like I said, none of this can be given to you. It is something that you have to own up for yourself and internalize. So, if you look at me, in most ways, I'm an empowered woman, quote unquote. I'm someone who's pursuing a vocation of my choice. I head the organization. I'm in decision-making roles. I travel. You know, I have the opportunity to pursue my interests. I can trek, I can paint, I can do all of that. At home, I do not have to necessarily take permissions. My husband is a willing partner in all household activities. Very often in organization, I have to stay out the whole night, you know, counseling our family. And there is a shared responsibility, you know, when Anushka was younger now, of course, she's older. So I didn't have to bother कौन उसको खाना खिला रहा है. And today I'm not there. So having reached where one has, one, I now experience a very different kind of awareness. and a need to achieve empowerment at a far deeper level for my own self. अपनी जो अपनी खुद की deeply felt conditioning है ना, उसके साथ काम करने की बहुत जरूरत है. Just being comfortable in the various roles I perform. So on some days, home will take priority. Some days, my professional work will take more priority. Being able to enjoy, someday parenting will take someday just me will take priority. To be able to enjoy all these roles with passion without feeling guilt. We are such guilt queens, as women. I don't know about, let me not generalize it. I'm such a guilt queen, I tell you. One day I have spent the whole day away from home. I came back, oh, kuch nahi kiya aaj घर के लिए, पता नहीं कहाँ अनुष्का कहाँ होगी, संदीप कहाँ होगा, to be able to say today was about something else, and tomorrow perhaps will be, just to be able to celebrate all the roles I play with passion and commitment, for me is empowerment, and that is what I am now training myself to. Also to be able to enjoy my husband and not necessarily feel indebted to him, just because that's undermining his respect for women. If he's done something because he thinks my wife is a working woman, not to feel indebted to him. I think in that sense, my husband, my daughter are far more empowered than I am. I would continue. So yes, the fact that I will have different priorities, that I would juggle my time accordingly without guilt. These are some of the things that empowerment is now beginning to mean to me.
Oh, wow. Definitely food for thought, Pallavi. Thank you so much because I think after listening to this, there are certain questions each of us will ask ourselves after you pointed out and very pointedly showed these moments. That's so true. And we are at that point where we have to end this beautiful conversation. But before we go, three life lessons from you in all your journeys.
Push your boundaries, you'll surprise yourself. So I really love the mountains, Rashmi. And I was a fairly regular trekker in my younger days. And then life happened, and then marriage happened, and then motherhood happened. And somehow, I took up trekking again after 40. And I've done some of my highest peaks after 45. I'm 52 now. At 50, I did Kilimanjaro, which is 19,000 feet. I did the Everest Base Camp the year before that, which is 17,000 feet. And it's amazing what the human mind and body is capable of. And you will never know till you push yourself. Second lesson, I think, health. As a women, we tend to neglect our health. I was never a very physical person. I never played sports when I was in school. I was always thin, so weight was never a problem till 40s happen, and your metabolism slows down and whatever. I started investing in physical fitness and health again much after 40. In fact, I trained myself to do marathons, and I run marathons and things like that. And now health is a daily part of I think I see my mom. As a child, I never saw her exercise. I never saw her taking care of herself, as a body, and I think that is something we cannot underestimate. Role models, yes, but I also want to, a very, very strong life lesson has been mentors. You cannot underestimate the power mentors play in your life. So be open and willing to have mentors, identify the right ones, invest in them, learn from them. These are not people who have got it all right in their lives, but these are people who have found ways to make the best of what life has offered them, excelled in that, and then use that knowledge to help others. So seek out mentors, and then try and be a mentor yourself.
Wow, I love this transformation from learning to becoming a mentor yourself and all that life has taught you. Pallavi, it has been an amazing conversation. Thank you for sharing every bit of what you took from life. And truly, life is about the now, the moment that we have, and taking the best care of ourselves and making the most of what we have now is what we leave behind as well as memories. So thank you so very much for this conversation.
Have this conversation because it also again helps you get in touch with things that mean to you, things that you've learned, so in hindsight, if you look back. So it's good to have these conversations it's like what COVID did, I think. It's again helped me slow down and, you know,
I'm so glad that it finally happened. So honored to have you on You and I with Rashmi Shetty. God bless you. Continue to inspire like you're doing. And more than the world outside, I think there's a lot of inspiration you're giving yourself with the work that you're doing, which is so evident with the way you talk
I
about
wanted
it.
to tell you in COVID, I took up painting. I had never painted.
Oh,
I never picked up a brush in my life. I'm very fond of animals, as you must have seen in my conversation.
yeah.
Doing animal paintings now, it gives me so much pleasure too.
Wow. Thank you for this conversation, Pallavi, and stay blessed and continue inspiring.
You too. Thank you so much, Rashmi. Bye bye.
Bye.
With that, we come to the end of this weekly quest of You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Do let us know if you know people who make the world beautiful. Write in to rashmi.thethirdeye@gmail.com. That is rashmi.thethirdeye@gmail.com. Come, let's explore this amazing world together, both you and I.